Do you have any comments about anything that occurred in your camp or on those dates that you recall?
We were not aware, and I mentioned, I think, earlier that we were just aware in the forest where we were working at the time that everything went dead quiet, and we all thought we were deaf. That's the only knowledge that we had, but that didn't come, the knowledge that the bomb had dropped of some form or other didn't come until we were released on our way home.
And how many kilometres do you think you were away from the site where these bombs had been dropped?
I think it was around about 650 kilometres.
Yeah.
We were a fair way away.
That's interesting.
So we saw no mushroom or anything of that nature, which was any indication.
Well, when did you really know that the war was over?
There was nothing specific, we just had feelings, and just the attitude of the guards and things of that nature. They're getting more friendly than they had been. And then the Japanese camp commandant called a special parade, a tenko as they called it. And we were fearful at the time that some of the later people that had joined us had mentioned about the Japanese shooting prisoners and things of that nature. And so when we were called onto the square for tenko, we were sort of looking around for machine guns, probably. Most of us had heard, because we'd been in Singapore, and we'd heard of the time when they were required, the prisoners were required to sign papers that said they wouldn't escape. And they were brought out onto the barrack square in Stadlerang, and the Indians were on guard with machine guns around the square. So if they hadn't signed the paper, they might have been shot, apparently. We all had that knowledge. So we were looking for the same sort of thing when the Japanese called this special parade. But no, there was no guards, and the guards that were there didn't have the rifles with them, so I thought that was strange.
And talking about the guards, were they people who you would regard as combatant troops, or were they people who were not fit enough to be combatant troops? Or
the first ones we had were quite friendly. They were obviously like a home guard troop. But then when they came back from the islands, they were more brutal and more inconsiderate.
Yes. When did you first see any members of the occupational force coming in to relieve you or to get you out?
Well, we didn't. After the announcement that the war was over by the Japanese commandant, we were dumbfounded and jubilant and excited. And we were told that, well, we weren't told anything at those stage. The first thing that we knew was that two V-29s flew over, and eventually they came in low. They dropped a walkie-talkie by parachute, a little parachute, and we were in communication with an American Air Force officer. And he told us that he asked about our sick and said the land force would be coming, and gave us general instructions on how to get ready for our release. It would be probably another week before another plane came over. In the meantime, no less than a week, food and clothing was dropped, and we're still waiting for the land force coming forward. The first thing we knew was when the trucks came in and took away the sick. After that, shortly a few days later, the trucks came in, and we all bundled into the trucks and were taken to a nearby airdrome. And some were flown to the mainland on Honshu, some was flew down to Manila. We flew over Hiroshima and places like that and saw the devastation that takes place. And then we headed down to, I particularly headed down to Manila and went through the delousing and recording and all the rest of it. And then we were instructed that we were going to be sent home. Some were sent home by airplane, some were sent home by ship. Some were sent across, most were sent across to America, and most went into Los Angeles and San Francisco. But the Canadians said that they hadn't had any through and would like some through. So I was on the American USS Hayward, and it went into Victoria in Vancouver. And we had the biggest welcome back and celebration possible. In fact, the celebration was more successful and more welcoming in Canada than it was in the UK, quite honest. But we were about 3 weeks in Victoria, and then we entrained across the Rockies down through to America, to Manhattan Island in New York, where we boarded after 2 or 3 days, boarded the Queen Mary, on a 5-day trip back to UK.
Oh. And when did you have the opportunity of reuniting with your family?
A few days later, we were entrained to go north. And, I was met by my father and my brother, my younger brother, who was 5 years younger than I was, which I didn't recognise.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Obviously to a great welcome home.
Yes. Now, this is one thing that intrigues me. Do you remember how much, I assume that you managed to accumulate back pay while you were a prisoner of war. Do you remember what the amount was? Was it a significant amount? Were you able to do something with it? Or?
Well, I had a problem when I came back as an officer. I resumed my rank. So I travelled back a little bit more in luxury than I would normally do. But when I came back, I think we got an ex gratia payment of about £76, something of that nature. As an officer, I was entitled to more. But when I checked with the War Office, I found out that my commissioning hadn't been recorded, no evidence. I hadn't had an opportunity to come back to UK. All records were destroyed in Batavia when we surrendered. Mm. So there's a few of us apparently have been commissioned, and it wasn't recognised officially. Mm. So I've never been able to call myself a lieutenant.
No. No, what a shame.
And
what was your...
The war was over,
yeah.
Finished, I wasn't worried about it.
Yeah, and what was your... Just give us a potted version of your life from the end of the war to now.
Well, I was 19 when I joined up, and I hadn't finished my studies. I intended to be a civil engineer, and I tried tried to reinstate myself as a civil engineer. Tried to get into university, which was offered, but there wasn't any room or space. All the returned ex-servicemen taken the opportunity to go back to university and so forth after the war, catch up with their careers. I eventually became an engineer, qualified, and in a district council in Ormskirk, where I became an indentured pupil and qualified, and then started to look for better jobs. And so I worked in Bury St Edmunds and Chippenham, progressed into Chief Assistant Engineer, and when I elected to move to Australia.
And what year was that?
Those two, in 1957.
Yeah.
Those two Australians said what a wonderful country it was, and I decided to go and have a look at it. I was forced into the situation of going overseas because I had a son at this stage. I was married and had a son who would have had rickets, or looked as though they had rickets. And he said that the only thing that would be of any health, any use to him would be vitamin D. I couldn't afford to live on the Riviera. So I decided I had two jobs offered to me, one in Salisbury, which was tax-free, one in South Australia. I decided on South Australia and missed out on the tax-free.
And in 2010 you're still here?
And well, I've been very fortunate because the government wanted to keep me for some reason or other, sent me back to university in Sydney, and I progressed here until I became the state traffic engineer.
Wow.
And then, due to health eventually catching up on me, I had a stroke and things of that nature. I had to retire.
Yes.
And I'm still around.
Yes. Now, Jim, you've written your book. I wonder if you might show it to us. It's called Gunner's Luck.
Thank you.
If you can just hold it in front of your chest, say a little bit higher, a little bit higher. That's good. Yeah, a little bit higher, up to your chin. Thank you. Now, how many did you print of these? Copies did you print of your book?
I think around about 2,000.
2,000. And where, if people would like to buy your book, where can they purchase them from these days?
Well, the publisher's gone out of business. Originally, he kept copies of them, but I don't know what he had left. He sent to me, and I don't know what's available. Not very many books are available.
Yes.
Except
So,
in the libraries.
So if anyone wanted to see if you've still got a copy, they could contact me and I could direct them to you. Would that be all right?
I think we might be able to find a copy.
Okay.
There won't be very many left.
Yeah. Well, Jim, can I say thank you so much for the trouble you've gone to provide this interview today, coming in from your home and with your wife being away in Bali with better weather than we're experiencing.
A lot better.
Yes. I'll just conclude by saying thank you so much. I didn't mention earlier that the interviewer is Peter Winstanley, Lieutenant Colonel, retired Peter Winstanley.